Hello and welcome to another video about old Star Wars Kenner toys. Today we will look at the content of this package that arrived today. It contains a small purchase I made recently from an online marketplace. More precisely, it contains a few old Star Wars Kenner figures and some accessories that were missing in the first lot of figures that I bought. Anyway, let's jump right into it and open the package. Okay. So, before we take a thorough look at the contents, I think I'll clean it first. But as you can see, it's Darth Vader, it's Luke Skywalker, it's the Ewok Wicket, and then some accessories over here. But let me clean it first, and then we can take a closer look. To clean the figures, I'm using simple tap water, and it's fairly warm tap water, and I'm using normal dishwashing soap. I'm using a toothbrush to get into all the crooks and crevices on the figures. It's a medium to soft toothbrush. I'm trying not to let the plastic of the toothbrush hit or scrape across the figures to avoid chipping away any paint or scratch the figures all together. Once I'm finished scrubbing them, I rinse them in clean water directly from the tap in order to wash away the soapy water. And finally I dry them with a fairly soft tea towel. Before I cleaned Vader, I carefully removed his cloak so that I could better get to him and scrub away. And that also made it easier to clean the cloak. Neither Luke nor Wicket were actually really dirty, and Vader was merely just a bit dusty. But as a principle, I clean all old and pre-owned figures that I buy. So now everything is cleaned and dry, and it's time to have a closer look. And let's start by looking at the figures one at a time, and afterward we can equip and outfit the respective figures that I already have with the missing accessories that I have here. Okay, so this is Luke Skywalker, Jedi Knight, from Return of the Jedi, and this is the outfit that he more or less wears the entire film. There is a figure from the same film where he has a helmet and a poncho, representing him in the speeder bike scenes on Endor. But besides that, this is pretty much the look from Return of the Jedi. I think that this was my favorite Luke figure when I was a kid, and it probably still is. And that's even though that I found it a bit annoying that his left arm here is bent, as you can see. But besides that bended arm, I think the design is pretty nice. And the face sculpt on this one is better than the other, or at least most of the other Lukes. And well, in regards to the story, this is of course also the cool Luke that is now a Jedi Knight, the Luke that has mastered his abilities and powers. And I think that helped to push him into being the favorite Luke figure as well, at least for me. He's supposed to have a cape or cloak in a grey-brownish fabric, and also a lightsaber, a green one, even though I think the first figures they released of this Luke, they fitted him with a blue lightsaber, which is of course wrong. So they quickly corrected that. And then he's also supposed to have a palace blaster. Palace being Jabba the Hutt's palace, because he force pulls it from one of Jabba's guards in the film. But the condition of this one is, that's okay. There's only a few paint areas that have come off. You can see his nose, tip of his nose, the paint has come off, and also here on his hand, which in both cases are quite common. So let me just note that down. Now I know they also made a couple of different versions of this figure, as they did with most of the figures. I know that there's two versions with different heights. One is a bit taller and one is a bit, well, shorter. I'm not sure what this is, as I can't compare it to any other version. But there was also difference in the details. Some were more detailed and some were more soft. I think this is more detailed. And then there were different versions for up here on this inner shirt, where some had only one line and some had two lines. I think this has only one line. And then there were also different moldings of the head. In some cases it was molded in plastic that had the same color as the hair, so the face was painted on. and in other cases it was the other way round, where it was molded in the face color and the hair was painted on. And since the paint has come off on his nose and revealed the hair color underneath, it's pretty obvious that this one has been molded in the hair color with the face color painted on. And finally, I also think there were two different shades of skin color. One where he had a pale face and one where it was more pink. And I'm pretty sure this is the pale-faced one. Yeah. Let's find a bag for him. So this is figure number 18, and that's Luke Skywalker. Jedi Knight. Outfit. Okay, so here we have Darth Vader, as you most likely know if you're watching this. He is of course the primary antagonist from the original trilogy, and of course before he was known as Darth Vader, he was known as Anakin Skywalker. I think the first time we hear that name, Anakin Skywalker, is in The Return of the Jedi, when Obi-Wan reveals it. And then of course the prequel trilogy reveals the background story of Anakin and how he became Darth Vader. Actually the Darth in Darth Vader is a Sith title, like Darth Sidious and Darth Maul. However, as far as I know, that wasn't the case to begin with. Darth was simply the first name of this character. When Lucas decided to modify things so that it became a title instead, I don't know. But as it was used as such in the prequels, it wasn't later than that, at least. Talking about the original and the prequel trilogy, I think that the character was originally more mysterious than he is today. There were only hints and snippets of his backstory in the original trilogy, making him more of a mystery. And I think a lot of that mystery disappeared when we got his backstory fleshed out in the prequel trilogy. Some might argue that that actually also made the character a little less interesting, while others might say that now they knew the backstory, it actually for them made the character more intriguing. For nostalgic reasons, I think I subscribe to the former. I like him to be more mysterious. Anyway, as far as I know, they only made this one version of Darth Vader, and they then, well, they re-released him in different packaging for the different films. Because, yeah, he was first released in the first wave of figures from A New Hope in 1978. Now, let's have a look at the condition of the figure. It's quite obvious that you might have noticed me trying to keep his arms in place because they are rather loose, both of them. I think his legs are fine, actually, and his head is, well, it's askew and also rather loose. I think I'll avoid moving it around too much. It might actually fall off. Well, perhaps. There's a bit of dust here. Let me just see. Can't really get rid of that. Perhaps I wasn't thorough enough when I washed him. Well, I'll try to get that off afterwards. Anyway, let's note the loose limbs and head. Loose arms and loose head, and well, head a bit askew. Okay. So in regards to paint, oh, is there more dirt here? So I actually ended up giving him a second cleaning right now, and it seemed to help. So let's continue. Now in regards to the paintwork, there isn't much paintwork on this figure. It's, as in the movie, more or less just totally black. So it's only here on this chest piece and on the belt. And it seems like it's more or less intact. There's a few paint chips on the belt. Okay, so let me just note that. There were produced two versions of the lightsabers for these figures. The first version consisted of two different tubes, a thinner one and a larger one, and the thinner one could go into the larger one, which was hollow, and then you could kind of pull out the thinner one like this, sort of in a telescopic way, to make a long lightsaber. Meanwhile, that version seemed to be too costly, so Kenneth soon switched to this second version, which was just one piece tube, but still had a thinner and a thicker half. And this is this version, and the thinner half has broken off, as you can see. And well, in any case, I'm not sure that neither versions were very good lightsaber designs. Surely it was a nice gimmick, this telescoping functionality, but in the long run it was poorly designed in context of being a kid's toy, I think. In regards to the first version, many kids would probably lose the thin, small tube. And here in the second version, as you can see, the thin end of the tube would often break off. Yeah. Let me just note the missing tip. Okay. Now I actually ended up replacing all the lightsabers for my figures. I didn't like this design, and I replaced them with plastic tubes from cotton buds. They fitted perfectly in these holes for the lightsaber, and they also came in different colors, vivid colors, and more importantly they came in a red and a blue and a green, matching the colors of the lightsabers from the first trilogy. So by sheer coincidence, they were a perfect alternative, and a better one if you ask me. So let's have a look at this vinyl cape. I think there were two different versions of this, a thin and a thick one. I'm not sure which version this is. But yeah, I actually never really liked this design either. Not for Vader or any of the other figures that had this vinyl cape. I prefer the ones made from proper fabric, which they did for some figures from the Return of the Jedi. And actually when I was a kid, I ended up making my own cape for Darth Vader. My mother had different kinds of fabric lying around, and there were some black among them. So I cut out a cape for Vader from that and fastened it around his neck with some black vinyl tape my dad had. And it was, at least in my eyes, a big improvement over this cape. This one also has some tears here in the holes for the arms, and it was rather common that the capes ended up in this condition. This also has some different, like these small dents here and there. And yeah, besides that, it's obvious it has been used. It's a bit crinkled. So let me just note that before we put it on him. So, cape. Tears in holes. Slightly damaged. Let's just put that. Okay, let's see if we can get this back on him without tearing it even more. think you were supposed to also be able to fold it back up here, and I don't know. Looks a little better, I think. I just noticed up here on the helmet there's some big mold residue. I don't know if they molded this head in one piece or two pieces and then glued them together, but there's some residue in any case. So let me just note that. Well, let's find a bag for him. So this will be number 19, and it's Darth Vader. There we go. Here we obviously have an Ewok, and he is from Return of the Jedi, where the rebels encounter the Ewoks and become members of their tribe on the Ewoks' home planet Endor. And of course the Ewoks also end up helping defeating the Imperial Legion that protects the Empire's generators for the Death Star's deflector shield. Now the name of this Ewok is Wicket, and he was one of my favorite figures as a kid. And holding the figure now here in my hand again and having a look at him really brings back some nostalgic feelings. I'm actually not sure that I had seen the Return of the Jedi when I got this figure as a kid. Meanwhile, I'm also not sure whether he became a favorite before or after I watched the film. I guess that the many years in between then and now have washed away any memory of chronology apparently. Anyway, I think I must have identified with him as he is an Ewok child. And of course he is also played by a child. Not that I think I knew that back then, but he was played by the British actor Warrick Davis, who was only 11 or 12 years old when he partook in the film. His grandmother had heard on the radio that they were looking for small actors, so his mother called to inquire, and it was actually only because of his smallness that they hired him, as his size was perfect for a younger Ewok, because besides that they already had enough actors for the Ewok roles. And originally Warwick was only supposed to play a background Ewok named Warrick, which is very close to Warwick It is apparently quite normal to give background characters the same name, or close to the same name as the actor playing them. So that explains that resemblance, I guess. Meanwhile, his performance had caught the eye of George Lucas, and when the actor who was supposed to actually play Wicket, namely Kenny Baker, fell ill right when they were going to shoot the scene where Wicket meets Princess Leia in the forest, George called in Warrick to replace Kenny, and so Warrick got bumped up to the more meaty role as Wicket. I'm not sure when they exactly combined the two names Wicket and Warrick, because the credit in the film only states Wicket. However, the card for the action figure states the name Wicket W. Warrick. Anyway, enough trivia. Let's have a look at the figure. Now, I think it looks in pretty good condition. Maybe there's a little scratch mark on the paint on his nose, but it's barely visible at a distance. Unfortunately, it also seems like there's no miscoloration on his limbs. There were some different versions where the limbs were a bit green. So that's pretty nice condition. Let's look at his accessories. Now there are two accessories. There's this hood, which is also in excellent condition. And then there's his spear here, which I also think is in very good condition. So let's pop his hood back on here. There we go. Actually, I think the hood, it's a little bit sticky, so it's probably the plastic that's started to degrade a bit. It's not much, so I'd say that's okay. Can't remember, not sure. I think the hood for my figure were a little paler than this, but I'm not sure. And then there's his spear. So there we go. Yeah, as I said, this figure really brings back some memories. Okay, let's find a bag for him. So he will be figure number 20, and this is Wicket W. Warrick. There we go. Now let's have a look at the accessories. Okay, so This is a rifle for a Snowtrooper or an Imperial Stormtrooper in Hoth battle gear, as was the official title back then. Have a look at the rifle. I think it's in pretty good condition. There were different versions of this rifle. There were different color variations and also minor details that were different. I think this is version 1 when comparing to images online of the different versions. So let's try and see if this fits. There we go. In regards to holding, or at least firing this rifle, I think it would make sense to actually use both hands, but of course that's not really possible with these figures, as they are pretty limited in their articulations. Now I think about it, this rifle does not really resemble the ones that they have in the film. While I think they are a little longer than Stormtrooper rifles, they are not as long as this, and well, all in all they have a different design. Anyway, the figure here is of course still missing the vinyl skirt that should go down behind him here, fastened here in those hooks at his hips. Okay, let's get him back in his bag with his rifle. Here we have two accessories for Princess Leia, Organa, in her Endor outfit. This is the figure from Return of the Jedi, from the mission to Endor. Now the Poncho is a bit simplified compared to the one in the actual film, but I guess all the Kenner designs are rather simplified, so nothing new in that regard. I think it looks in pretty good condition. I like the fact that they started to use fabric a lot more in the Return of the Jedi line. I'm not sure, but I think the only figure they use fabric for A New Hope or The Empire Strikes Back were the Java figures. Let's try and put it on her. So there we go. Of course the belt is still missing, which should go around her waist and in these holes holding the poncho around her waist. While I like the fabric, there is of course often an issue with using it at such a small scale, because while you can easily reduce length and width, there's a limit to how thin the fabric can be, and in many cases that results in a fabric ending up looking rather clumsy. I think this is okay. Now her helmet. I think condition-wise it's it's in good condition. And let's try it on. It also fits fine. I guess that in order to have the helmet not be too big, they made her head a little smaller than they would have normally, at least in the width. So I think her head ended up being a tad elongated. Of course, as mentioned, still missing the belt, and she's also supposed to have a blaster, but I'll see if I can find both for her. So for now, let's put her back in the bag. Now the final accessory is this trench coat for Han Solo. And this is the Han Solo from Endor, from the Return of the Jedi. There were two versions of this trench coat as far as I know. One version where the lapels were blank, like here, and one which also had the camouflage pattern on it. And as you can see, there is camouflage pattern on these lapels, but it's on the inside. So in other words, the version depends on how the person sewing the trench coat together turned the fabric for the lapels when sewing them on. I like this trench coat. I prefer this over any vinyl version. Let's try and put it on him. There we go, I think. Right. It still suffers a bit from what I also mentioned in regards to Leia's Poncho, that on this scale fabric has a tendency to look a bit clumsy and a bit stiff. I think especially here on Han's arms, it's clear that the coat doesn't really flow along, and it's a bit rigid. Meanwhile, this is how it was made, and this is how I remember it. It is an original, and so in regards to nostalgic points, it's exactly how it's supposed to be. And of course I'm still missing the black rebel blaster for him, but I'll look for that. Let's get him back in his bag. So I have now added a few more figures to my collection, as well as some missing accessories for a couple of the figures I already had. I will keep on looking for more missing accessories and also more figures I do not have yet. That will be the focus of some of my upcoming videos. But this is it for this video. Thank you for watching. If you have any comments, feedback or corrections, then please let me know. I'll see you in my next video.